Chapter 12. Course for Kiln. Amara exhaled a shaky breath, prying herself from the cold bulkhead as the iron orchid surged into a sleek, exhilarating sprint away from the station. Freya, Amara rasped, rubbing her temples. Check the outer hull integrity around the airlock. Make sure we didn't pop any secondary seals when we tore that tunnel off. On it, boss. Freya grinned, already heading for the diagnostic panel. She paused, pinching her nose. Seriously, though, you smell funny. Amara ignored her, stripping off her garbage-stained jacket and tossing it unceremoniously into a nearby decontamination bin. She headed for the companionway, taking the metal stairs two at a time until she reached the flight deck. The cockpit thrummed with nervous energy. "Captain on deck!" Jake called out from the pilot's chair, his hands flying across the console as he stabilized their trajectory. He spun his chair around, his eyes wide behind his tinted goggles. "Amara, what the hell just happened? The station traffic control is screaming at us. They're threatening to send syndicate cruisers." "Let them scream," Amara said, dropping heavily into the empty command chair behind the pilots. "We just tore half an Athelgard strike team out into the void. If we hadn't burned the clamps, they would have melted through the airlock in 10 seconds. Raffi let out a low whistle from his isolated weapons station in the corner. "Athelgard, you've really stepped in it this time, Amara." He paused, his thick nose wrinkling. "Speaking of stepping in it, what exactly is that smell?" "Station garbage," Amara sighed, resting her head in her hands. "Don't ask." She straightened, forcing her fatigue aside, and fixed her gaze on the stars beyond the viewport. "Jake, head out as if we are going to the primary jump gate," Amara ordered, her tone shifting back to command. "Make sure our transponder ping registers on their long-range scanners. But the second we are out of visual range of Relay 9 and the sensor shadow hits, kill the transponder and set a silent course for Kiln." Jake paused, his hands hovering over the analog controls. He looked back at her over his shoulder. "Kiln? So we're not leaving the system?" "No," Amara replied grimly. "If Carver has the kind of pull we think he does, he'll have the syndicate jump gates on high alert within the hour. We won't make it through the aperture, so we go to Kiln. We go dark. And then we try to figure out what to do next." "Course locked in," Jake confirmed, turning back to his controls. "Engaging primary thrusters. Next stop, the bone pit." The deck thrummed with a deep, reassuring hum as the orchid shot forward, the wild neon of Relay 9 fading into the endless dark behind them. Amara pushed herself out of the command chair, her muscles aching in protest. "I think I could do with a shower," she groaned, heading for the bulkhead door. As she walked past the crash seats at the back of the cockpit, she paused. Ellie was sitting quietly, her legs pulled up onto the seat. The comically oversized pajamas were gone, replaced by a pair of dark, sturdy trousers, insulated boots, and a thick, dark green flight jacket that fit her perfectly. Amara managed a warm, genuine smile. "You look nice in your new clothes, kid. I'm glad they fit." Ellie looked down at the jacket, a faint blush touching her pale cheeks. "Thank you, Amara, for everything." Amara offered a tired, reassuring nod before turning her attention to Finn. He was leaning against the bulkhead, arms crossed over his chest, his dark eyes watching the exchange. "Finn," Amara said, her voice dropping to a serious murmur. "Could you let everyone know what the story is with Ellie? I think it's about time they heard what we're actually running from." She looked past him to the dark-haired mechanic hauling the remaining supplies aboard. "And welcome aboard, Tess." Tess smiled, leaning against the back of Doc's co-pilot chair. "Thanks for having me, Captain." Amara gave a short, wry laugh, her hand hovering over the release pad. "You may want to hold your thanks until you see what kind of trouble you've signed up for." She stepped through the sliding doors, leaving the quiet hum of the flight deck behind to scrub the smell of Relay 9 off her skin. Finn stood in silence for a moment, feeling the eyes of the entire Orchid crew turn toward him. Jake had pulled his goggles down, Doc was swiveling around from the tactical monitors, and even Raffi had stopped running diagnostics on the rotary cannons to listen. Finn looked at Ellie. She nodded slowly, giving him silent permission to share her nightmare. "All right," Finn rasped, taking a deep breath and looking around the cockpit at the veteran crew. "Here's what my brother died for, and here's why we're currently hiding from the biggest biotech corporation in the galaxy." The Iron Orchid's lower deck recreation area was an unexpected pocket of luxury. Unlike the stark, utilitarian cargo bays or the austere engineering corridors, this room had been designed for long hauls and deep space comfort. It looked like the lounge of an upmarket hotel on one of the core worlds. Soft, warm lighting illuminated plush leather seating arranged around a flickering hollow fire. In one corner sat a pristine pool table and a well-used dartboard, while the opposite wall boasted a polished, fully stocked bar. But tonight, the atmosphere in the room was anything but relaxed. The entire crew was gathered around the low table in front of the hollow fire. Amara, fresh from her shower and dressed in comfortable spacer fatigues, sat beside Finn. Raffi, taking up almost an entire loveseat himself, swirled a glass of dark amber liquor, his heavy brow furrowed in thought. Tess and Doc leaned against the bar, nursing their own drinks, while Jake sat cross-legged on the floor. Ellie was curled in the corner of the biggest leather sofa, cocooned in a thick blanket, eyelids fluttering as the crew's low voices lulled her towards sleep. Finn took a slow sip of his whiskey, the warmth doing nothing to cut through the exhaustion. He had spent the last hour explaining everything. He told them about Leon's murder, the faked coroner's report, and the empty Athelgard container. And then, he had gently helped Ellie explain the rest: the black site facility on Umbrix, the biological jump gates, and the terrifying shadows waiting in the dark. No one had called her crazy. In the endless, freezing expanse of the void, every spacer knew that some things defied explanation. "So, they're playing God," Raffi rumbled, breaking the heavy silence. His deep voice resonated in his chest like a drum. "Using kids as living nav computers to punch holes in space-time. If Athelgard perfects this, they don't just bypass the syndicate tolls. They can move an entire armada across the galaxy instantly, completely undetected. And they will kill anyone who gets in their way," Doc added quietly, setting his glass on the bar. "Which is why they sent a hit squad after Leon, and why they won't stop looking for the girl." "They won't," Amara agreed, her green eyes fixed on the flickering hollow flames. "Carver knows she's alive, and he knows she's with us. We burned hard to fake them out at the station, but Athelgard has deep pockets. They'll hire bounty hunters, slice the local comms relays, and put a quiet word out to every corrupt dockmaster in the sector." Tess sighed, running a hand through her dark curls. "Which brings us to our biggest problem. We're trapped." "She's right," Jake muttered from the floor, tracing a pattern in the rug with his finger. "We can't use the primary jump gate. If Carver has the kind of pull to cover up a murder in Sector 7, he absolutely has the syndicate gate authorities in his pocket. The moment the Orchid broadcasts her transponder near the aperture, we'll be boxed in by corporate cruisers. We're stuck in the Draven system, Finn said grimly, leaning forward. We can't run to the outer colonies, and we can't hide in the core worlds, which is why we're going to Kiln. Rafi raised an eyebrow, taking a slow sip of his liquor. I've heard of Kiln, old mining rock, right? Stripped bare a long time ago. Exactly, Finn nodded. It's a graveyard. There are thousands of miles of abandoned subterranean mining tunnels, deep canyons, and zero corporate presence. It's the only place in the system where we can power down the ship and disappear. Amara looked at him, her expression serious. Disappearing buys us time, Finn. But it doesn't solve the problem. We can't live in a cave for the rest of our lives. Eventually, we have to make a move. I know, Finn murmured, his gaze drifting over to the sleeping form of Ellie on the couch. The girl's chest rose and fell in a slow, peaceful rhythm, finally safe for the first time in years. But right now, we need to regroup, rest, and think. We will have to decide what we are going to do about Umbrix. You want to hit a heavily fortified corporate black site? Tess asked, her eyes widening slightly. Just the 6 of us? They killed my brother, Finn said, his voice dropping to a cold, razor-sharp whisper that silenced the room. He looked up, meeting the eyes of every crew member in the lounge. And they are torturing kids to tear holes in the universe. I don't care how many credits they have or how many hunters they send. I am going to burn Athelgard to the ground. The silence that followed was absolute.